Let's fill out a map based on the latest polling in every state according to Decision Desk HQ and 538's averages. We'll start by giving both candidates all of the states that they won by more than 10 percentage points in the 2020 election. For Donald Trump, those are Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, North and South Dakota, Nebraska at large, as well as the 1st and 3rd congressional districts, Kansas, Oklahoma, all the way down here we have Alaska, then Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, and South Carolina. And then for Joe Biden, Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii, New Mexico, Colorado, Illinois, Virginia, New York, Maine's 1st congressional district, Vermont, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, D.C., Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. Now, with all of these states out of the way, Biden and the Democrats start out at a 209 to 125 electoral college vote advantage. We can be practically certain that both candidates will carry all 36 of these safe states by comfortable margins again this November. Swings of more than 10 percentage points from election to election are practically unheard of in modern presidential politics. And given that 2024 is a rematch of 2020, individual state shifts are likely to be even more muted than usual, as most people's opinions of Trump and Biden have pretty much been set in stone since before 2020. Now, these 14 remaining states are the ones you're going to want to watch closely on election night, as they will give you the best clues as to how the race to 270 electoral votes will shape up. And on that note, let's go in order of poll closings this time around, so you can get a better idea as to how the night will progress from 7 p.m. onward. Now, obviously, voting in most of these states here across the middle of the country and over on the Pacific Coast will remain open longer than the East Coast states. But again, it's very, very unlikely that either Biden or Trump will make a play for these states already colored in deep blue or red. At 7 p.m. Eastern on election night, the polls will close in 6 states, but those paying close attention will know that the only state that really matters at this poll closing is Georgia. The closest state in the 2020 election, Biden won it by just 0.2 of a percentage point, 0.2%, and a vote margin of less than 12,000 votes out of almost 5 million ballots cast. Now here in 2024, Trump has maintained a consistent advantage over Biden in both polling averages. Decision Desk HQ and The Hill have him leading Biden by 4.5%, based on 37 polls in their head-to-head average, while 538 has Trump up 5.5% with the inclusion of independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Either way, these are both lean Republican margins over here on the electoral map. If we average them together, we get a Trump lead of exactly 5 points, close to his 2016 margin over Hillary Clinton in Georgia. Now, the other state that we'll be watching closely here at this hour is just to the south in Florida. Now, most polls close in the Sunshine State at 7, but some counties in the Panhandle are located in the Central Time Zone and therefore close at 8 p.m. Eastern. So even if Trump is up big in the early returns, which he very well may be, and we know that Florida does report votes quickly, the networks will be holding off on making a call until at least 8 o'clock. There's a good chance, though, that we'll know that Trump has won Florida before 8 p.m., as he is expected to win the state by the largest margin for a presidential candidate of either party in quite some time. The latest polling average by Decision Desk HQ has Trump up 8.5 points over Biden in Florida, according to an aggregate of 16 polls. Meanwhile, 538 has Trump up by an even larger margin, 11 points, and averaging those out, we get Trump plus 9.8, just below the cutoff to be a solid Republican state. Instead, it'll go down as a likely Republican here. Now, in case you're new here, these qualitative rating classifications for either party, solid, likely, lean, and tilt, cover a range of margins to more easily visualize differences between states. Solid includes all margins above 10%, likely between 7 to 10%, lean between 3 to 7%, and tilt between 0.1 to 3%. Now our next poll closing arrives pretty quickly after 7 at 7:30, when polls will close in Ohio, West Virginia, and North Carolina. Now, West Virginia is obviously very deeply red. It was Trump's second strongest state in 2020 at R plus 39, but Ohio and North Carolina are more interesting. Trump did win Ohio by 8 points in 2020, the same margin he carried it with in 2016, after Barack Obama had won it in both of his elections in 2008 and 2012. Now, the saying, as goes Ohio, so goes the nation, was the catchphrase describing Ohio's bellwether status, but that ended in 2020, as for the first time since 1964, it voted for the losing presidential candidate, Trump. That being said, Trump is expected to carry it comfortably again in 2024, as the latest DDHQ in the Hill average is Trump plus 10.2, according to 13 polls. The former president has led by at least 5 points in each of these surveys. And then, according to 538, they've got Trump leading Biden by just under 10 points at 9.6%, with Kennedy at exactly 10% right here in this average right now. Combining the two averages, we get Trump plus 9.9, again just below the cutoff to mark Ohio as safe Trump. It'll join Florida as likely Republican on the electoral map. Then down in North Carolina, it seems like North Carolina is always seemingly in play for Democrats until the results come in and Republicans consistently pull out narrow victories. In fact, the last 7 presidential elections and U.S. Senate races in North Carolina have gone to Republicans by less than 6 percentage points. After Obama carried it in 2008, Mitt Romney won by 2% in 2012, and then Trump held it in 2016 by 3 points, before winning by an even narrower 1 point over Biden in 2020. Now, if there is one state on the 2024 map where Joe Biden and the Democrats could potentially go on the attack to try and expand their coalition, it would be North Carolina, though that will be a tall task, as the latest Decision Desk HQ average has Trump leading by 3.9% based on 36 polls, 48.2% to 44.3%. This is actually the narrowest Trump lead in this average since November of last year. Though comparing it to 538, they have Trump up by a much wider margin at 6.4%, 44.6% to 38.2%, with Kennedy at 9.5%. Now, notably, RFK Jr. has qualified for the ballot in North Carolina, so it is worth noting that Trump does seem to be doing better in this average that includes the independent. Combining the averages, though, we get Trump plus 5.1, almost the exact same margin as in Georgia, and so the Tar Heel state joins the Peach State as leans Republican. Our next poll closing at 8 p.m. is the largest of the night. More than 180 of the 538 electoral votes available are at stake at this hour, including the quintessential battleground of Pennsylvania, along with New Hampshire and Maine in the Northeast, plus most counties in Texas will start reporting votes around this time as well. Though, as is the case in Florida, the most western counties, primarily El Paso over here, remain open until 9 Eastern, so Texas, like Florida, will not be called before then at the earliest. Let's start in Pennsylvania. The Keystone State in name and practice was notoriously slow at counting votes in 2020, as Biden won the state over Trump by just over a point. Trump had become the first Republican to win here since 1988, as he did defeat Hillary Clinton by 0.7% in 2016. This is a state that the Biden campaign pretty much cannot afford to lose. It is very, very hard to see a viable path to 270 for the incumbent if he does lose Pennsylvania, where he was born, and where his appeal as a candidate is most tailored to the demographics of. Still, though, according to DDHQ, Trump does lead here by 1.5 points, based on 52 polls. More polls have actually been added to this average than any other battleground, highlighting just how much attention we can expect Pennsylvania to get over the coming months. Comparing this, though, to 538, we see Trump leads Biden by 2.1% here, 43.1% to 41%. Combining these averages, that gets us to Trump plus 1.8, a tilt Republican margin. That lifts Trump up to 223 electoral votes now, and with states like Texas, 40 electoral votes, and Iowa, 6 electoral votes, still not yet assigned a rating, you can already begin to imagine just how dire the 270 path for Democrats becomes with a loss here in Pennsylvania. Up in New England now, both New Hampshire and Maine have been reliable blue states over the last 4+ election cycles. Biden won New Hampshire by 7 points and Maine by 9 points in 2020. The latest average from Decision Desk HQ and The Hill has Biden leading by 3.7% in New Hampshire, based on exactly 10 polls. Now, unfortunately, 538 has yet to generate an average for New Hampshire, but based on the polls, you can see here that we can assume it'd probably spit out a margin similar to that of DDHQ, and therefore let's place New Hampshire as lean Democrat here. Up in Maine now, neither DDHQ nor 538 have a polling average for Maine just yet, as it seems there are not enough polls. So why not make our own average then by combining the latest polls here, Trump plus 2, Biden plus 17, Trump plus 6, and then Biden plus 1. Averaging those out, we get Biden plus 2.5, which is a tilt Democrat margin. Remember that Maine and Nebraska split their electoral votes, awarding 2 to the statewide winner and 1 per congressional district. The second districts in both states are the ones to watch, as Trump won Maine second in 2020 by 7 points, while Biden won Nebraska second by 6 points. Unsurprisingly, we don't have any polling averages for either district itself, so again we can create our own. In Maine, there are 2 polls for the second district, and they are Trump plus 20 and Trump plus 14. So we can place it down as solid Republican on the map. And then in Nebraska's second district, we actually only have 1 poll here, conducted by Public Policy Polling, and it has Trump up 3 points over Biden, both in the head-to-head and full field versions. That means that we can place this Omaha-based second district down as tilt Republican. And so that brings us up to our 9 p.m. poll closing now. Now this is when things will really start to get going on election nights, as not only will we have more results out of these previous states, but we'll start getting our first returns out of Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Arizona. At this point, we're also likely to have most of the vote in out of Texas, as they do tend to report their early and absentee votes pretty quickly. I would also be shocked if Florida was not already called for Trump by now, as it'd probably be at around 90 or more % reporting, and while we would have a pretty good chunk of the vote out of Georgia and North Carolina, that'll depend on how close the margins are to know really how quickly they'll get called. Let's go through the averages here in the 9 o'clock states, starting in Michigan, Biden plus 3 in 2020, like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Michigan had gone blue in every election between 1988 and 2016, when Trump won by his narrowest margin in that election, 0.2% over Clinton. Since that election, Democrats have performed exceedingly well, though, and coming into this cycle, it's one state that Biden absolutely cannot lose. I'd go as far as to say that if Biden does lose Michigan, it's over. Trump wins a second non-consecutive term in the White House. And with that said, the former Republican president is yet again leading Biden. His margin over Biden is almost identical to in Pennsylvania at Trump plus 1.5 based on 49 polls. Trump currently sits at 48.2% in an average of these head-to-head surveys over Biden's 46.6%. Then in 538's average, they both obviously drop quite a bit in terms of vote share. In the full field average that includes Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Trump's overall lead dips below 1% to 0.9%. He's at 41.6% to 40.6%, with Kennedy at 8.8%. Now this is especially notable as Michigan is one of only 2 states where DDHQ has independently confirmed with the Secretary of State's office in Michigan that RFK will appear on the ballot. And while we did see him pull more support away from Biden in North Carolina, we see Biden gaining slightly here in Michigan. Either way, going back to the 2024 electoral map in Michigan, it'll tilt towards Trump. In Wisconsin, the lead, according to DDHQ, is even narrower. It's Trump plus 0.1, literally the smallest lead that he could possibly hold based on 35 polls so far. Now, if you take a look down here at the timeline graph, this average has remained pretty consistent over the last few months. Biden has yet to lead in the average overall, but he has now led or been tied with Trump in 4 of the last 5 polls. Yet according to 538, Trump's lead grows to 1.6% with RFK included. Interestingly though, Biden did actually lead at this point last month according to this average. Wisconsin though joins Michigan as tilting towards Trump, meaning that he narrowly sweeps the Rust Belt just as he did in 2016. Notably, Wisconsin has been decided by less than a point in 4 of the last 6 presidential races. The only exceptions were 2008 and 2012, when Obama won the Badger State comfortably in consecutive elections. Over in Minnesota now, Biden leads Trump by 0.6% based on 11 polls. This is as close as it has been since last November, and it's obviously a lot closer than Biden would like, considering that he won Minnesota by 7 points in 2020. Shifting over to 538, he has a little more breathing room here at 2.4 points over Trump. Combining these averages, we get Biden plus 1.5, which is actually the exact margin that Hillary Clinton won Minnesota with in 2016. We're going to mark it down as tilt Democrat for now. As for the state of Iowa, similar story to Ohio, blue for Obama in 2008 and 2012. Trump then swung it deep into Republican territory at R plus 9 in 2016 and R plus 8 in 2020. The latest average here by DDHQ has Trump's lead at only 3.1%, again, closer than it had previously been, but this is really just due to the latest poll by Zogby Strategies showing Trump up by only 2 points among 405 likely voters. Trump had led by at least 6 points in the previous 9 surveys. Now 538 has not yet created an average for Iowa, so we're going to have to mark it down as leaning towards Republicans on the map based on Trump's 3.1 point lead per DDHQ. Again, though, Trump's actual polling advantage is probably going to end up being much higher as soon as we get a new poll. All the way down in Texas, 40 electoral votes, 2 more than it awarded to Trump in the last 2 cycles. Texas is one of the fastest growing states in the country in terms of population, and the latest average from DDHQ has Trump up 9 points based on 11 polls. That's closer to his 2016 margin than 2020, when his 5.6 point margin over Biden was the narrowest for a Republican since 1996. Biden's 46.5% vote share in 2020 was the highest for a Democrat since 1976, when Jimmy Carter was the last Democrat to win Texas. That said, Trump made significant gains among Hispanics in 2020, a key voter bloc, especially in South Texas, where the 2022 midterms showcased continued GOP strength in the Rio Grande Valley. Now shifting over to 538, Trump's lead is even larger at 10.8 points. Kennedy is polling at the highest share here, actually so far, out of all of these polls at 12%, and he has claimed ballot access here in Texas. Now averaging these 2 averages out, we get Trump plus 10 exactly, which means that Texas will be safe GOP here on the electoral map. And then over in Arizona, the second closest state in 2020, after Georgia at Biden plus 0.3, like Georgia, Biden became the first Democrat to carry Arizona since Bill Clinton in 1996, and only the second since Harry Truman in 1948. Taking a look at the latest average, according to DDHQ and The Hill, Trump now leads Biden by 3.3% based on 46 polls. That's very much within the margin of error, and it's actually the closest it's been since last September, as the last few polls have shown a tighter race. Saying that, though, Joe Biden has not led in an individual survey in Arizona since last June. Now, according to 538, Trump's lead expands to 4.6% here with RFK included, 42.8%, 38.1%, and Kennedy at 9.9%. If we do average these out, we get Trump plus 3.9, another lean Republican margin. Finally, let's wrap things up in Nevada, where the Decision Desk HQ average has Trump up 5.4% based on 32 polls. This is pretty much in line with how he has fared since last October, when things were closer and Biden actually led for a little while. Remember, Biden did win Nevada by 2.4 points in 2020, an identical margin to Hillary Clinton's 2016 victory in Nevada. But given that the national popular vote shifted to the left between those elections, that actually means that Nevada shifted to the right compared to the rest of the country. The GOP also flipped the governor's office in 2022 and secured a majority in the state's U.S. House popular vote for the first time this century. Taking a look over at 538 again, we have another Trump lead by a slightly larger margin of 6.6%. RFK has claimed ballot access in Nevada, so his numbers here are worth watching as time goes on. But nevertheless, averaging out those averages, we get a Trump plus 6 margin on the dot, which means Nevada joins the long list of lean Republican states here on the Electoral College map. And with that, we can now see that Donald Trump is favored to win a second non-consecutive term in the White House, the first since Grover Cleveland in 1892, as he is projected to win 313 electoral votes, according to the latest polling averages, over Biden's 225. Trump's strength is most obvious in battlegrounds across the Sun Belt, like Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, and North Carolina, where Republican gains among Black and Hispanic voters have put them in a strong position to secure these states, where Democrats typically rely on strong turnout among non-white voters. Conversely, in the Rust Belt, most notably the trio of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Biden is polling within the margin of error against Trump, and he will be hoping that continued backlash against the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade will rally Democrats like it did in 2022, when they swept the governor's races in these states and consistently overperformed in U.S. Senate and House races as well. It is worth mentioning that abortion is generally more popular in these states than it is in the more religious and therefore traditionally conservative Sun Belt states, particularly North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. That just about does it though for this video's analysis. Let me